We all know by now Auburn has one of the best wide receiver cores in the country, but could Eric Singleton be a first-round draft pick? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single week, albeit on a Wednesday this week, my good friend Kyle Rush from the Barn joins me to talk a little Auburn wide receiver. We've been talking a lot of wide receiver lately, Kyle. Today we're talking Eric Singleton and his prospects of maybe being a first-round draft pick. And then in the second half of the show, we'll talk about what it's going to take to get him there. Kyle, let's start at the top here. Eric Singleton Jr. Getting some good evaluation from those who do such things at the NFL level. NFL Rookie Watch says that he is the nastiest route runner in the 2026 NFL draft class. Reports that several scouts believe he is a top 5 wide receiver in the next year's draft and is already in first round conversations. And they're comparing him to Devonte Smith and Calvin Ridley. High praise for Eric Singleton Jr. Before we started recording, you and I talked about him being a guy that Hugh Freeze took a look at out of high school. He got some late Power 5 offers from Georgia Tech, Auburn, as well as others. Eric Singleton Jr., man, they just keep snatching gems out of the portal year after year under this coach. Could Eric Singleton be that next guy, and how huge would it for him to be a first-round draft pick for Hugh Freeze?
Mike, man, the more I see about this kid, the more I watch film of him, the more I get excited. I don't know that we're prepared for this caliber of wide receiver to be in this rotation. To peel back the curtain a little bit, you and I were sitting here watching the TikTok video like at the same time, and we could tell which clip we were on by the oohs and the ahs. We're like, oh man, that first route when he put Ryan Strader in a blender. I mean, he put this TikTok out of practice film and just kind of caught fire. And that's what this tweet you're mentioning is in reference to. He's got the quickness. He's got the agility. I love the Calvin Ridley comp because to me, Calvin Ridley had more of the stop and start left and right. And Devonte was just really smooth. And I think Eric's more of that Calvin Ridley type route runner. It's impressive to watch. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that hard to get him the ball. Like you got to just figure out ways. It doesn't matter if you throw it behind the line of scrimmage, in front of the line of scrimmage, whatever. Just get him the ball because he can make things happen.
I know Hugh Freeze said recently that he does not feel pressure, Kyle, but certainly there is going to be some urgency this season around getting these wide receivers the ball. Just a complete, embarrassment of riches at wide receiver with Cam Coleman, now Eric Singleton, Horatio Fields, Malcolm Simmons, Perry Thompson. These guys are, if you're Jackson Arnold, you should be able to throw the ball in any direction. And there's a playmaker waiting there to make an incredible play for you. Hugh Freeze wanted catch radius. He got it. He wanted speed. He got it. He wanted flat out talent. He got it at wide receiver, Eric Singleton Jr. Now, as we mentioned just a second ago, this was someone who he had his eye on out of high school. So not completely unknown to this staff. Same as Jackson Arnold, a guy that Hugh Freeze was following since high school. He's getting his guys in here. This is a team almost in the complete mold of a Hugh Freeze envisioned team. So Eric Singleton Jr. Looks to be a huge part of that. Look, I know all eyes are on Cam Coleman. Keandre Lambert-Smith was the leading receiver last year. What do you see the production like for Eric Singleton Jr. this year, Kyle? I mean, last year at Georgia Tech, not super gaudy numbers, but the talent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at like all-purpose yards for him because he's going to do it in a multitude of ways. Like he's going to catch balls out of the backfield. He's probably going to get some carries. I think he had somewhere like 30-something carries last year, 20 or 30-something carries last year at Georgia Tech, and I think he had some big ones against Georgia. I'm not necessarily worried like, hey, he's going to have 1,500 yards receiving. Like I think this dude's going to have well over 1,000 all-purpose yards if they get him the ball, punt returning. It doesn't matter. Like this kid is electric. Like he is he is electricity personified. Like the way he moves, he's just a superior athlete. You mentioned that Auburn was after him a little bit in high school. That was whenever, Hugh got hired at the end of November. And I think Auburn actually offered him on December like 7th or something like that. And it was so late in the game and there was so much to do in such a short amount of time. I don't think they were able to make it happen. And honestly, it may have been a blessing in disguise. Because if you get him, who knows if he's the player when you have all the turmoil that you've had over the last 2 seasons, who knows if he's the player he is now, if he actually started off at Auburn. So honestly, it may ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I think you have a ready-made SEC baller to go along with all these other guys. Like, pick your poison. If you're Jackson, you got to be drooling. Like, I think one more thing, and I'll jump. I'll kick it back to you. But Hugh said, if you caught one of the interviews he did recently, he said Jackson protected the ball really well until he started to get really, really confident with the wide receivers. And then it was just like, I'm just putting it in the area of those guys. And I think he may have turned the ball over at times, maybe trusting them too much.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's going to be, I don't know that's necessarily a bad thing. I think trusting your wide receivers and letting them make plays, you're going to win more of those battles and then you'll lose.
Yeah. Look, Eric Singleton Jr. Had 90 targets last season at Virginia Tech. 90 targets. Auburn did not have, like, Keandre Lambert-Smith didn't even have 60 targets last year. So if Eric Singleton Jr. gets 90 targets this year, he's going to be a 1,500 yard receiver at Auburn. I don't know what else to say about it, man. And I know those are gaudy numbers, but certainly he has that sort of talent. The breakaway speed, something that they mentioned with Eric Singleton Jr. was that he potentially runs a low 4.2. So he's going to be one of the fastest players in college football, if that's true. Having that type of speed, game-breaking speed, he's a threat to take it to the house every single time he touches the ball at 4.2, Kyle. I don't know what to say here. Like, I know he's not super tall, but certainly he's got good ball skills and he knows how to make a play with the ball in the air.
None of those Alabama receivers were tall. Like, if you really think about it, like Ruggs and Devonte Smith and all those people, Calvin Ridley, like all these guys we named that had 1 billion receiving yards, they were like, 6 foot, 5'11"? Like, they weren't very big, tall guys, but they knew how to run routes. They were coached really well. They just knew, they had that NFL speed and agility. And I just think that's what Eric has in droves. And that's what the subject of what we're talking about, people are noticing. I've been trying to think of like a playmaker at Auburn that we've had that's close. And I've really struggled to like come up with something, but like, he feels like who we thought Trevon Reed would be. You remember Trevon, like, coming out of high school? We thought Trevon would be this electric playmaking wide receiver, Percy Harvin type. And it ended up, man, he probably should have been playing DB the whole time because he ended up being an NFL defensive back. But I try to draw a comparison, and I can't. I don't really know that we've had anybody that has the ability that this guy has.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch them in this system. Look, before we move on to what it's going to take for him to be this first round guy, I referenced the targets. We'll talk about some other numbers in the second half. But, where do you see him playing?
Anywhere.
Is right. It seems like he's kind of a tweener, right? Like, he may move inside out. They can move him to different spots if you're Hugh Freeze.
I think you can line him up anywhere on the field. I really do. I think if you got to play him in the slot, you can get you a matchup there. If you want to put him on the outside, I think he's got the, sometimes when you get on the outside and you're a smaller receiver, you worry about them being able to get a jam on you and you can't get off the line and can't get your release. But he's so dadgone quick. Like, I just don't know that you can really get a good lick on. I don't know if you can get a hand on him real good to slow him up. So I really think I would expect to see him all over the field. There were times last year when Hugh tried to do this with Malcolm, try to kind of formation him into a play. I don't think you necessarily have to do that with Eric. I think you can line him up and just run whatever that play is scripted to be out of that position. He can get open and he can make something happen. I think it's an invaluable tool where like a Cam Coleman is more pigeonholed to be like on the outside. I think Eric, you could flip a coin and could be like, how the Alabama kids used to do rock, paper, scissors for,
Yeah,
to
for
see
sure.
who's going to get the touchdown pass. I think it could be that with Eric and he could go anywhere on the line or off the line of scrimmage and score.
Yeah, look, what kind of numbers is it going to take to get Eric Singleton into the first round? We'll talk about that in our next segment. Right after a word from our sponsors, our friends at the Vibe Vault. If you're in the Phoenix City, Columbus area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite I in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to the Renfro Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. Also, our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com and use code REPORT to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Our guy Richard put a little something special in there for everybody coming over using code REPORT. Longtime sponsors of the show, please make sure you go support them. Also, our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron. Workout, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Kyle, let's jump back in here. I mentioned the targets. 90 targets for Eric Singleton Jr. last season. I can't remember a season where any Auburn wide receiver came close to 90 targets, but they project to throw the ball a little bit more. That's not saying that Auburn's going to move away from the run. I just think that in a more successful offense, they're going to run more plays, and we're going to see a greater balance of run and pass. So you'll see more opportunities for the wide receivers and the running backs here. But certainly, you don't recruit all these wide receivers to ground and pound. They're going to sling it around with Jackson Arnold and this wide receiver core. But aside from the targets, right? He had 56 receptions, which is about where Keandre Lambert-Smith was last year. That catch rate is going to have to go up. Opportunities are going to have to go up for everybody. I think that he had 56 receptions. I think Cam Coleman had 55 targets last season. So wow. The opportunities just have to be there for them to do it. Year after year, we see in the SEC, the top wide receivers are somewhere between like 80 and 95 catches, Kyle.
Yeah.
Like catches, not targets, catches.
Not targets.
And so you've got to get them the ball in high volume. You've got to get a target number somewhere in the triple digits if you want to see these guys play themselves in the first round. Is it possible we could see a Auburn wide receiver with 100+ targets? And is it Eric Singleton Jr.?
With him, to me, the significant thing is how do you feature him to me, and how can you get him open from a statistical standpoint? I think you're going to have so many good threats at wide receiver out there. Those 90 targets and 56 receptions, he's really the biggest weapon that Georgia Tech had. And like everybody knew it. So it's a lot harder when you're having to, break through all the traffic to make something happen because they're keyed in on you. You can't do that. You can't do that against Auburn. I don't think you can key in on Eric Singleton Jr. or you're going to get beat by insert whoever other one of these 4 or 5 receivers that you have in this room. So he may not have 90 targets, but he may have 70, but he may have 65 receptions or 60 receptions. In other words, a lot better catch percentage because of all of the attention that wide receiver room as a whole gets. I think if you can get anything around or over the production he had at Georgia Tech, anywhere between 700 and 1,000 yards, there's going to be some of it that's going to have to be like cannibalized by the other wide receivers. Anything you get in there, I think he's got a really good shot, especially if it's showcasing his athletic ability to be in that first round conversation. I don't think you have to go 1,500 yards, 100 catches. You get him in that 70 catch range, boy, he's going to do some special things.
Yeah, I think so. 311 of his 754 yards after the catch. So he's catching the ball and he's getting up the field here, with Georgia Tech. I think he'll do the same with Auburn. Again, this is about opportunity, and I can't stress that enough to our listeners. Eric Singleton Jr. is part of the reason, that I think Auburn projects in a lot of people's top 15 this season. The talent is bursting at the seams, and it's really hard. It's starting to get hard to ignore all the talent that Hugh Freeze has brought into the Plains, unprecedented levels of talent. Shifting the conversation a little bit, I made a statement, and a lot of people jumped down my throat. My good friend Doug Amos did not like my statement about this being probably the most talented by composite star team that we've seen at Auburn in the last 20 years.
I mean, I can't. It's hard to disagree. It's hard to disagree. There's some arguments for maybe like somewhere in that there was a really good, that 2017 team had a lot of good players on it. Honestly, the 2019 team had some really good players on it. But I think really, if you want to go top to bottom, some of those late Tuberville teams, or I think you have to go all the way back to there to find, just from a top to bottom standpoint of all, full roster of, guys that can compete at a really high level. I do. I think you got to go back a good ways. And I can't say you're wrong. I can see the argument to go all the way back to, 2005, 2006, or 2004, whichever, you pick one. I can see the argument for this team being more talented than every other team all the way back to then, for sure.
Yeah, look, it's hard to say that when you've got an undefeated national title in there, but I think you and I both know that 2010 team had the most talented player in college football, but it was not the most talented team in college football, certainly.
No, I mean, you only had 2 draft picks. And then, I mean, none of your offensive line were draft picks. None of your wide receivers were draft picks. None of your running backs. I mean, it was Cam and Nick Fairley. And then it was a bunch of it was just a bunch of average guys that played really hard.
Yeah.
Around them.
Yeah, I like what they've done here. In my interview with Hugh Freeze, we talked about him closing the gap between Auburn and the top of the league. They feel like they're one recruiting class away from saying, hey, look, we've got the talent to match. Now we just have to go out and beat these guys. But certainly this year represents an opportunity. Now, we won't get into it, but there was some stuff floating around in the media about Hugh Freeze and him possibly implying that just making a bowl game would be acceptable. You and I both know that's not what he was saying, and certainly he understands he's got to win more than 6 games, especially with this talent. But when he says he doesn't feel pressure, I've been trying to tell people, saying that you don't feel pressure is not the same as saying that you don't feel the urgency around this season. And certainly there's an urgency around winning this season because of how the first 2 seasons went. Now you've got Eric Singleton Jr. in here, and what he could be for you if you're Hugh Freeze is the beginning of something really great. Like, look, if Eric Singleton has a Keandre Lambert type season, stay with me here, Kyle, on this one.
Yeah,
but Auburn wins 8 or 9 games, he's a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick at the very least, because I think that the association with losing hurt Jarquez Hunter and Keandre Lambert Smith. Those guys should have been drafted. I think they're better than their draft positions. And as Auburn begins to win games, you're going to see guys being taken higher in the draft with, coming from winning squads. Winning gets you more looks. And Eric Singleton Jr. is another opportunity for Hugh Freeze to say, come to Auburn and we'll get you to the league.
Yeah. And then you've had, I think you've had 2 guys out of the portal that you can bring in 1 year. You can elevate their game, So yeah, I'm with you. I think I like how you phrase that. I was going to go with a different word. Pressure. When he says he doesn't feel pressure, it doesn't mean that he doesn't care. But urgency was a great term. You said that perfectly. Hugh talks like you and I do at a press conference. He just kind of says what comes to mind. And there's if you don't want to take it completely literally, and you just kind of know by the way he talks, you can understand what he's trying to say. And
yeah,
I'm with you. I didn't really understand why it became such a big deal, but the bottom line is he understands that what happened last year and the year prior cannot happen again, or he's in trouble. And I think that's basically what he said. And he's got the tools to do it. He's closed the gap. And I don't want to say excuse, like there's no excuses, but you've exhausted all of your grace period. Now you've got to where national media members are noticing this is a really good roster. You're getting national media members that are putting you in their top 25. You're getting national media members that typically aren't allies, like Auburn fans would think about Paul Feinbaum. You kind of are on pins and needles whenever you hear him talk about Auburn. He's very high on this team and the turnaround. So all of that is really putting a premium on now results. You got to go make it happen. So I'm excited. The more I see these guys, the more I see these other unbiased sources talk about these dudes that have been added to the team. Just the more excited I get.
Yeah, hard not to be excited seeing Auburn guys get this preseason love. SEC Media Days is just around the corner. It's about 2 months away. It'll be interesting to see how many of these guys get recognized by the media as potential preseason all SEC guys. I'll be there voting. Our good friend Zach Blackerby will be there voting. Auburn's got some name brand type guys on the roster this year. It's going to be fun to see what they can do when the season gets here. Kyle, I want to thank you for joining me. As always, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Absolutely. Subscribe to thebarnauburn.com. It's a fun message board community, and you catch me there every day. Mike jumps in there sometimes. It's a lot of fun, and you can join in the conversation. You get recruiting updates, team updates, and just from a different perspective. We don't pretend like we're not fans. We're fans that cover the team. So it's just a different way to consume Auburn content, and we'd love to have you.
Great community over at the Barn. Please go show them some love. If you're in the comment section after this video, show us some love. Smash that super thanks button and help us keep our work here at the War Report going, guys. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express powered by the War Report. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. Signing off, and as always, War Eagle.